Adding a Gore-Tex, oh, this is way deeper than I thought. Oh, God. Wow, look at that. Absolute carnage. In 1974, this boot was deemed the best value hiking boot in the country. This style of boot is so cleverly designed, which we'll go over today, that it dominated the hiking industry for years. Even elephants were wearing the Danner 6490. Cool. However, this boot beat the pants off of it, the Merrell Moab 3. And it's not even close. Well, I guess it could be close. Now, this boot isn't what it used to be at all. It used to be literally a tank, a real block of a boot. This one doesn't sit well with a lot of people when you consider this boot's price tag. Danner is in a very weird spot, an uncomfortable, annoying, gross, yucky spot, but I do think they did something clever and something that they had to do. What's up, everyone? It's Michael. How are you doing? It's cold outside, and today we're talking about the Danner Mountain Light, and we're comparing it to the Merrell Moab 3s, aka what's on my feet versus what's on my back. We're gonna break it down into these 3 points. Number 1, the basic material overview and sizing information on these bad boys, which, by the way, I think they're some of the prettiest looking boots I've reviewed so far. Number 2, where did I get this incredibly becoming and handsome scarf? Just kidding, that's not gonna be in this video, but I got it from Taylor's little sister Cassidy. She knit it for me for Christmas. The real number 2 is that there are some amazing design features in this boot, and then there are also some things that I don't like at all. Hint, 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 hint. And finally, number 4, this boot got very trendy and popular this year, and there are a lot of alternatives that I think are very worthy of mentioning, so we'll mention them at the end with the roundup answer of also, are they worth it? There's something that these Danner boots do that no other alternative boots really do. You could try to do it in them, but still. In order to really understand the incredibly weird boot that is the Danner Mountain Light, you have to understand its father, the 6490, the original look-alike version of this boot that was built dramatically different. It had incredibly thick leather insoles. It was fully leather lined. It was essentially just big fat chunks of leather with a steel shank inside of it. It was just a beast of a boot, but for the time that it was made, it was not beastly. At the time, most boots were around 5 pounds. The 6490 was 4 pounds, which was unbelievably light. When the 6490 came out in 1970, it was named by Backpacker magazine as the best value hiking boot in the US, in the country. Because the 1970s were a time where people wanted value hiking boots because the outdoors were more popular than ever before. There was a huge surge both in environmentalism and outdoor activities in general, and that really hit its point when the first Earth Day happened in 1970, I believe it was. The 6490 was released at the absolute perfect time, and so was Gore-Tex, we'll get to that later, not because it was the absolute best hiking boot, but because it was the best value hiking boot. But before we get into any of that, this boot does have some incredible features that I want to go over really bad, especially the tongue of this boot. That is the best thing about this entire boot. Seams in general are the weak point of any garment, shoe, bag, accessory, anything you can imagine. That is where you can pull things apart. That is where water comes through. It's where a whole mess of things can happen. So the Danner boys, and they did look at Italy, said, hey, what if we just didn't do seams? What if we put very few seams on this boot? And everybody was like, that's a great idea. I can't believe we didn't think of that earlier. So these boots are one-piece construction. You cut out one piece of leather, fold it all up, sew it at certain points, and you don't have a lot of seams. One, they are inherently more water resistant than most other boots to have a lot of seams. And two, I actually learned this from a Rosanville video that you should check out. There's less pressure points or crease points because you're not stacking leather on top of each other that bends and hits your feet. The other massive technology that Danner integrated into their boots was Gore-Tex. They were the first ever boot to use Gore-Tex in the 1970s. So fun fact, although Gore-Tex doesn't seem like it has its place in leather boots, which is, the really negative thing I'll talk about in a little bit, Danner did do it historically very soon into the life of the 6490, which I believe was already called the Mountain Light at this time. And Gore-Tex kind of changed the scape because all of a sudden, the most popular hiking boot was now the first ever fully waterproof leather boot. So people were like, oh my God, can this get any better? Before we get to my all-time favorite feature, and then we get to what everybody hates about these boots, we have to talk about the outsole, the midsole, and the sole area in general. The goal of this ad integration is for Michael to get a free pair of sunglasses with a 14-karat gold skull emblazoned on the side of them. This video is sponsored by St. Bones, who makes some of the craziest avant-garde jewelry, timepieces, streetwear collections you've ever seen in your life, specifically sunglasses. St. Bones was started in 2013 by a couple of buds who had an eye for the unconventional. I mean, they have a comb that costs $61,000. I asked St. Bones if they could send me a pair of their 53 sunglasses in bespoke black with a sterling silver skull on them, And they did. The 53 is modern yet timeless, bold yet understated. The glasses and skull are handmade and designed in-house in Austria. Honestly, in all seriousness, I think the 53s are amazing. They feel great. The sterling silver skull on the side is great. They're polarized, which is a huge plus. And I think they're super stylish, and I know they're super stylish because the second they arrived on our doorstep, Taylor stole them from me. She committed theft. So thank you very much to St. Bones for sponsoring this video. I really like all this stuff. I like the 53s, I like the Rockstars, I want a pair for myself. They have beautiful bracelets, timepieces, clothing, everything in that aisle, fantastic. They also have really beautiful koi fish earrings that I want to get Taylor for a gift. She likes fish.
I'll take the koi fish earring.
Before we get to my all-time favorite feature, and then we get to what everybody hates about these boots, we have to talk about the outsole, the midsole, and the sole area in general. This entire bottom part was one super dense, heavy chunk of rubber, which is great for durability. As you're walking around, it doesn't wear down as easily. But now you'll see it's three pieces. We have that incredibly dense, heavy rubber at this bottom sliver. Then we have a huge chunk of foam in the midsole, and then we have another incredibly dense, chunky piece of rubber. These boots that are built specifically for hiking can now be dramatically lighter. Most of the weight in Danners is contained in the bottom out and midsole, so if that's all foam, boom. The other thing it does is that it gives you a bit more cushion when you're actually hiking and walking around because of that foam. Everything that I didn't mention except Gore-Tex, because Gore-Tex obviously is synthetic, in this boot is synthetic, which obviously the first thing that you probably think is that Danner is cheaping out. They're not using the thick leather construction that they used to, and I can't say that's not why they're doing it. I can't say that's not an added benefit to why they're doing that, but although it's not liked, it's so obvious as to why they did it, and the payoff I think is massive. So really, yes, the boot, for a boot this style, does have a lot of synthetic materials inside of it, but we'll get to why right after I talk about the tongue, because I gotta talk about the tongue. I got a French kiss, you guys. You'll probably look at these boots and think, huh? There's only one side of the tongue? I know. It's incredible. So really what Danner does is they have a little notch that they fold over the tongue, and this serves two purposes. One, it adds an extra layer of leather over the top of your foot to give it more protection if you kick a rock or a stick or whatever it may be. But two, it helps keep water out of the boot more effectively because only one side is open, and then when you open the boot up, well, I'll just show you, hold on. It looks like this weird like knife sheath thing that you could slide something into, but really, it opens up to a regular tongue angled with this flap of the boot over it to protect you. That, my friends, is what we call the business. I believe this tongue design was invented by Paraboot's sister company, Galibier. So not Danner specific, but still cool. So I gotta go, the police are coming. And then of course, we have this boot. The Merrell Moab 3. This boot is 11 ounces lighter than the Danners. It dries faster, it breathes better, it's more cushioned, and it's 300% cheaper than the Danners. So you would think, well, there's no place for Danners anymore. But that, my friends, is what makes them so amazing. Hey, weirdly, I only said one other time in this video that these are recraftable boots, which is obviously a huge deal. Once these boots get old, you can rebuild them and continue to use them. So it's a huge value add that Merrell's and other boots like Salomon's and Hoka's don't have. It's really impossible to notice how amazing Danner boots are if you don't go and buy them from a physical store, because at that physical store, you have the incredibly modern, super cush bottom Hoka's, then you have Salomon's that look like there's something out of the future, then you have a billion other boot brands using all the latest and greatest materials that are feather light, super waterproof, and everything like that. And among all of that modern technology, there sits Danner, a boot that was introduced in the 1970s and really hasn't changed that much since, and it's still there. There's no other boots from that era in that lineup. It's just this one weird leather single piece boot, and if Danner didn't strategically over the past 50 years change things incrementally, they wouldn't be there. Such as using synthetic materials on the inside of the boots so they dry faster if and when they get wet. But Danner is still used in the hiking community semi-regularly, which is wild. Now, obviously, you probably guessed, since we're going towards the water, I'm conflicted about this. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I hate it. Sometimes I love it. Other times I hate it. But the mix of Gore-Tex and leather, to me, is like mixing peanut butter and butter together. Adding a Gore-Tex, oh, this is way deeper than I thought. Oh, God. Danner does make a mountain light without Gore-Tex. I just didn't notice that until after filming. So it may sound like I'm saying I wish they did, but they do. What just happened? The mix of leather and Gore-Tex to me is essentially, if I said I had a bulletproof cookie and you shot the cookie and you found out the inside of the cookie was like 2-inch steel, the cookie's not bulletproof, but there is steel inside that technically makes it bulletproof. And with Gore-Tex, what you really have is a water-resistant, really nicely constructed boot with a waterproof sock liner on the inside, so water is not staying out of the boot right now. It is going into the boot, but the sock liner that is inside of the boot is blocking the water from touching my feet, and I don't like getting leather this wet. I actually really hate it because it dries out the leather and things over time. So these two materials don't really make sense for my specific use case. I understand it's for a general hiker that would be very thankful if this happened. Now, with that being said, the reason I'm okay with a waterproof membrane on the Merrells is because although we have these leather accents throughout that are protecting the general structure of the boot, this boot is mainly built off of a polyester mesh with cushion under it, all synthetic. So you can get these boots wet, it won't affect the polyester, and they will dry incredibly fast. And that combination, to me, is what you should expect on a waterproof boot because it's built for that. Is the Danner Mountain Light worth it? The answer, of course, is yes and no. So number one, obviously the biggest thing, these boots are made in America, but not just made in America. They are made in Portland, Oregon by union labor. For the employee rights and everything, this is really the highest that you could possibly get in the US. So not just US labor, the top of the top, paying, employee treatment, everything labor. Number two, obviously high leather grade, one-piece construction, all that's very important. But number three, Charles Danner, I believe, when selling this company said, I will only sell this company if you treat it as I treat it, which is obviously it's his namesake company. So he treated it incredibly well. And Danner, the brand and the company that owns the brand, has kept that promise forever. Because if you look at the recrafting time, how long it takes to fix the boots, it's 3 weeks. It is lightning fast. They are well staffed. They have great customer support. I DM'd them on Instagram. They responded immediately to me on the weekend. This is a company that cares about their products and cares about their customers because that is what you're paying for, essentially. Now, to be honest, the argument for them not being worth it is a lot easier to make because FratCap has gorgeous hikers that are made the old way that are also cheaper, but they do feel like you're walking on leather boards. Eddie Bauer has their K6 that seems very close, but it's Goodyear welted and it's 3 times less and it's not made in the USA, but still, it looks basically the same. GH Bass just released their 1876 collection, which looks absolutely insane. If you want to spend more, there's obviously Paraboot. Those I would say are more alpine based. And then you also have DMA, which to me, their boots look cooler. They're not necessarily cheaper, but some are, and they have a rubber support higher up, so your feet will stay drier without the use of Gore-Tex. But even then, you really have to just figure out what you're looking for, because none of those things that I just mentioned have the same combination of materials that a Danner has, so still, Danner may be the right choice for you, but even then, there is also the Merrell Moab 3 and Salomons and Hokas. There are so many other different boots that are better values for what you're getting for your dollar, that Danner is not the best value boot in the world anymore. Are they worth it? For me, yeah, I think they're cool. I'll be happy with these for a very, very long time. All right, anyways, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate every time you click, and I'll see you very soon. Okay, goodbye.